Jack Ramsey stood back, wiped the sweat from his brow, and admired his work. The fence stood tall and flawless, clean lines of cedar stretching across the back edge of his property like a wooden wall of quiet dignity. He had designed it himself, built it board by board on weekends, with the kind of stubborn care only a single man with free time and no HOA breathing down his neck could afford. He had every right to be proud, and yet something prickled. From the moment he hammered in the final nail, he'd had that feeling. Not like he was being watched exactly, more like someone had already judged him. Jack turned slightly. There, across the thick hedge that separated his land from the entrance of the neighboring subdivision, stood a woman. Not on the sidewalk, not on the other side of the road. Right at the hedge, arms folded tight against a peach cardigan, she squinted as though his fence personally offended her eyeballs. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked like it was trying to escape her. Scalp and the expression on her face could have soured milk. Jack gave a polite nod. "Morning?" No response. The woman continued to study the fence like it had broken into her home and insulted her sofa. After another long second, she spun on her heel and walked back toward the suburban sprawl behind her. Jack frowned. He'd seen her once or twice before on his runs past the Oakstone Hills subdivision, a neighborhood he purposefully hadn't bought into because of its soul-sucking HOA reputation. He lived just outside their jurisdiction, free and clear, and that's how he liked it. Still, her stare gnawed at him. What had she seen? What was she thinking? Shrugging it off, Jack packed up his tools, took one final look at the fence, and went inside. A hot shower and celebratory steak dinner awaited him, but the next morning, something odd. A letter, folded in thirds, no envelope. It sat in his mailbox like a quiet threat. He unfolded it slowly. Notice of violation to whom it may concern. Your recent fence installation has been observed to violate the following neighborhood standards: height exceeds allowable limit by 1.5 feet color, and finish not in compliance with uniform aesthetic regulations. Installation occurred. Without approval from Architectural Review, committee fines will begin accruing as of the third business day unless rectified. Oakstone Hills. Oh, there was no name, no signature, no contact information. Jack blinked. Wait. What? He looked around, half expecting someone to pop out of the bushes with a clipboard. Oakstone Hills HOA? That wasn't his neighborhood. He pulled out his property map and triple-checked the boundaries. His parcel sat comfortably outside Oakstone Hills, like a boat just beyond the whirlpool. So why the letter? He pulled up the footage from the night before, scanning through the camera at his front yard. At 2:14 a.m., a figure crept up to his mailbox, hunched low, blonde hair, peach cardigan. It was her. She slid the letter in and scurried off. Jack leaned, back in his chair, a low laugh escaping. So that's how it was going to be? A rogue HOA warrior trying to enforce rules outside her kingdom? He stared at the footage again. Her face had that same twisted mix of righteousness and disgust. Whatever. She was planning. Jack had a feeling this wasn't over, and part of him kind of wanted to see what she'd try next. The next morning, Jack barely had time to sip his coffee before the doorbell rang. He opened the door cautiously, expecting a package or maybe a neighbor. Instead, there she was, the woman from across, the hedge. Up close, she was even more rigid, like someone who ironed her soul every morning before breakfast. Her peach cardigan was back, only this time it was paired with a gold-plated name tag that read, Karen Dillinger, Architectural Oversight Chair, Oakstone Hills HOA. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said sharply, like she was already annoyed with him for answering the door. "I'm here regarding your non-compliant fence." Jack blinked, still half asleep. Non-compliant? She held up a manila folder and tapped it with one finger like it was a holy text. Yes. As noted in the courtesy notice you received, your fence exceeds height restrictions. doesn't match neighborhood-approved colors, and was built without submission to the Architectural Review Committee. Jack slowly crossed his arms. That courtesy notice was stuffed into my mailbox at 2 in the morning with no name or signature. Her lip curled. Well, consider this your official notice, then. I'm delivering it in person to be neighborly. Jack took the folder without opening it. Neighborly? I don't even live in your neighborhood. She didn't flinch. You may not be within the official boundaries, she said, her voice tightening, but your property faces Oakstone Hills. Your fence is visible from our east entrance. That makes it part of our shared visual ecosystem. Jack nearly laughed. Visual ecosystem? Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping a register. We work hard to preserve Oakstone Hills' character. We can't allow rogue elements to degrade our community value. Jack leaned against his doorframe. I'm not part of your HOA. I never signed anything. You can't enforce rules on someone outside your jurisdiction. A flicker of something dark passed across her face. She recovered quickly, that pinched smile snapping back into place. Many residents find it easier to comply voluntarily, she said smoothly. Legal boundaries can be flexible when property values are at stake. Now Jack did laugh. You're bluffing, Karen leaned in slightly. You may find that ignoring this situation creates consequences. We prefer peaceful resolutions, Mr. Ramsey, but the committee does have ways of addressing external threats. Before Jack could respond, she turned and walked briskly down the front steps, her heels clicking like gunshots on the concrete. She didn't look back. Jack stood frozen, heart thudding, not with fear, but with disbelief. Was she serious? Did she think she could just claim his property with paperwork and... Glares? He opened the folder. Inside were printed pages. Faux legal letters demanding removal of the fence, diagrams of height limits, even a digitally altered image of his property with a corrected shorter fence drawn over it in red. At the bottom of the last page, a single line chilled him. Continued failure to comply may result in escalating action. Jack stared at it for a long moment. This woman wasn't just nosy. She wasn't just entitled. She was dangerous in that special HOA way, where petty control mixed with imagined authority to create real-world problems. He looked at his security. Footage again. There she was, standing at the edge of the hedge watching. This time, she was taking photos. Jack didn't expect her to return so soon, or so boldly. The sun was barely climbing when the knock came, sharp, insistent, cutting through the quiet morning like a warning siren. He glanced at the clock, 7:13 a.m., too early for visitors, too early for good news. Opening the door, Jack found Karen standing there again, clipboard clutched like a weapon, eyes narrowed with all the fury of someone who believed they were enforcing cosmic order. This is the final warning, she said. Voice clipped, almost rehearsed. You must remove or modify your fence immediately. Failure to comply will force the HOA to initiate legal proceedings. Jack raised an eyebrow, folding his arms. We've been through this. I don't live in Oakstone Hills. Your HOA has no jurisdiction over me. You're trespassing right now. Karen's lips thinned. Not trespassing. I'm standing on your property line. I'm well within my rights to notify you. Jack stepped outside and looked down the property line, the thick hedge clearly separated. His yard from hers. He was on his side, no doubt. You're a persistent one, he said dryly. Karen's gaze flicked to his fence, then back to his face. This isn't about persistence. It's about protecting neighborhood standards. Your fence disrupts our visual harmony. Jack fought the urge to laugh. Your visual harmony doesn't extend past the neighborhood gates. I've checked the deed, the county maps, even your HOA charter. Karen's smile was tight. Perhaps you should check with the board again. They've authorized me to act where necessary to protect community aesthetics. Jack's patience cracked. You've got no authority here, Karen. And I'm asking, You to leave. The corner of her mouth twitched, a blend of irritation and something almost personal. I'm not leaving until this matter is resolved. Jack's eyes narrowed. Then you're trespassing. Karen's expression hardened, but before she could respond, the hum of an engine interrupted them. Jack's neighbor, an elderly man named Mr. Harper, pulled into his driveway nearby. Karen's eyes flicked toward the street. Mr. Harper, she called sharply, as if summoned by a general. I trust you understand the importance of maintaining our community standards? Mr. Harper raised a puzzled brow. I'm not sure what this has to do with me, Karen. She folded her arms, her tone snapping. You live within Oakstone Hills. Your support of our guidelines is expected. Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. Don't drag others into this. Karen ignored him. We'll be in touch. With a stiff nod, she turned sharply on her heel and marched back across the hedge, her heels clicking like warning bells. Jack watched her go, heart pounding, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of someone waking up to a fight he hadn't wanted. Later that afternoon, Jack received an unexpected call. Jack Ramsey? A woman's voice asked. Yes? This is Lisa Grant, president of the Oakstone Hills HOA board. I'm calling regarding your fence. Jack braced himself. I'm aware of the situation, Lisa said carefully. Karen has been very proactive. However, after reviewing your property records, the board recognizes you are not under HOA jurisdiction. Jack exhaled slowly. That said, Lisa continued, some residents have expressed concern about the fence's appearance from the neighborhood side. We hope you might consider a compromise to maintain neighborhood harmony. Jack frowned. So, no demands, just suggestions? Lisa hesitated. Yes, but Karen has some influence. She's passionate about this. The board is working to manage the situation. Jack hung up, feeling the weight of the underlying message. Karen wasn't just an overzealous volunteer. She was a force within the HOA, and she wasn't going to stop. Jack looked at his fence, feeling a sudden prickling of unease. He had built it to protect his privacy, to mark his space, and now it was a battleground. Something told him Karen's campaign was only beginning. The days after Karen's visit passed with a strange, unsettling quiet. Jack tried to return to his normal routine, work, exercise, evenings spent tinkering in his workshop, but something felt off, like the calm before a storm that hadn't yet announced itself. He checked his security cameras obsessively, but the footage showed nothing unusual. No late-night visitors, no prowlers lurking near the fence, just the occasional raccoon scavenging for crumbs. Still, the sense of being watched didn't leave him. Then the subtle signs began. One morning, Jack found his prized rosebush, planted carefully beside the fence, crushed and uprooted. The soft earth around it was disturbed, but there were no footprints, just faint marks that looked like something heavy had been dragged. The day after, a garden light by the driveway lay shattered, its glass smashed on the pavement. No explanation, no apology note. Jack chalked it up to vandalism, but felt the anger rise inside him. Who would want to damage his property? More importantly, who had the nerve? His suspicions quickly settled on Karen. It wasn't just the fence anymore. It was a message, a warning. Still, Jack held his ground. He wasn't about to be bullied off his own land. One evening, as twilight slipped across the sky, he stepped outside for a cigarette, eyes scanning the neighboring fence line. The hedge was thick and dark, but he thought he caught a flicker of movement, a shadow melting into the bushes. Karen? He muttered. Silence. Jack's fingers tightened around the cigarette. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. That night, he double-checked his cameras, repositioning them to cover every angle. He even installed a couple of motion sensor lights that flashed bright when triggered. Yet for days, nothing happened. Then came the most unsettling moment. Jack woke to a faint crunching noise outside his bedroom window. Heart pounding, he peered through the blinds. There, at the edge of his property, stood Karen. She was alone, clutching a clipboard, her gaze fixed on the fence like a sentry guarding a fortress. When she noticed him watching, her eyes flashed with something between triumph and warning. She didn't say a word, just turned and disappeared into the shadows. Jack didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he found another note pinned to his gate. No signature, no letterhead, just 3 words. Remove it now. Jack's mind raced. Was this a legal threat? A personal vendetta? Or just the start of a dangerous obsession? He called Lisa Grant, the HOA board president, hoping for some clarity. Lisa's voice was tight. Karen's gone beyond the boards. Instructions. We're trying to rein her in. Jack felt the faintest relief, tempered by worry. If even the HOA leadership couldn't control Karen, what could stop her? He resolved to document everything, photos, videos, notes. He contacted a local attorney for advice on harassment and property rights. But beneath his practical plans simmered a deeper unease. Karen wasn't just an overzealous committee member anymore. She was turning into a shadow stalking his life, and Jack knew, deep down, the real battle was just beginning. Jack's days soon became consumed by research, an all-consuming dive into county records, zoning laws, and Oakstone Hills HOA documentation. What started as curiosity spiraled into obsession. If Karen was willing to cross boundaries, literally and figuratively, Jack needed to understand her reach and her motives. He spent hours at the county courthouse, sifting through public files on Oakstone Hills, the HOA board members, and previous property disputes. At first, everything looked normal. Typical suburban HOA bylaws about lawn maintenance, fence heights, paint colors, and so forth. But as Jack dug deeper, a darker pattern emerged. Several homeowners, just outside Oakstone Hills' official borders, had received similar violation notices. Unofficial, unsigned, threatening. In each case, complaints filed against the HOA had mysteriously vanished or had been dismissed on technicalities. No records of investigations, no public hearings. One name kept appearing in whispered neighborhood forums and hushed conversations: Karen Dillinger. She wasn't just the architectural oversight chair, she was, according to some, the unofficial enforcer of Oakstone Hills, a self-appointed arbiter who patrolled the borders like a sheriff without a badge. Her zeal to maintain community standards extended well beyond the HOA's legal reach, and those who resisted were quietly pushed out or bullied into submission. Jack found posts on obscure social media groups complaining about anonymous warning letters and nighttime property inspections. One homeowner described a terrifying late-night encounter where their fence was spray-painted with non-compliant in bright red letters. The worst part? None of the victims dared speak publicly for fear of retaliation. Jack's stomach twisted. If Karen was this powerful, why hadn't the HOA board stopped her? He tried calling Lisa Grant again, but her voicemail was full. A quick search revealed no public events or meetings scheduled, just silence. His mind raced. Could the HOA leadership be complicit? Or worse, helpless? Jack's paranoia grew. He doubled down on security, motion sensors, new cameras with infrared night vision, and even a fake "Beware of Dog" sign he hoped would deter unwanted visitors. Then, one night, the cameras caught something. At 1:37 a.m., a figure moved stealthily across his yard. The woman in the peach cardigan, Karen, followed closely by a man in a dark uniform. Jack recognized the man immediately from a photo he'd found online, a city inspector suspended for misconduct and fraud just months ago. Jack's heart pounded. Why? Was Karen consorting with a disgraced official? Were they scheming to manufacture violations and enforce illegal penalties? He rewound the footage, watching as the pair measured his fence, whispered to each other, and scribbled notes. Jack snapped photos and saved the files, knowing this evidence was his strongest weapon. His mind flashed back to Karen's words. Legal. Boundaries can be flexible when property values are at stake. He wasn't just dealing with an overzealous neighbor. This was a carefully orchestrated campaign, possibly criminal. Jack sat back, exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd stepped into a rabbit hole deeper than he'd imagined, but he wasn't about to back down. He picked up the phone and dialed his attorney again. "It's worse than I thought," he said grimly, "and I'm not sure the law is enough." Jack sat at his kitchen table, eyes glued to the laptop screen. The footage of Karen and the disgraced inspector replayed in his mind like a sinister loop. It wasn't just harassment anymore, it was a full-scale campaign, a conspiracy wrapped in suburban civility. The next morning, Jack woke to an eerie silence that felt heavier than usual. His security cameras were suddenly offline. The blinking red light on the main hub mocked him. Someone had cut the power. He rushed outside, scanning the perimeter for signs of forced entry. No footprints, no broken locks, just the unsettling knowledge that whoever was behind this knew exactly what they were doing. That evening, as dusk deepened, a knock came at his door. Jack's heart skipped. He wasn't expecting anyone. Opening cautiously, he found a man in a well-tailored suit, standing there holding a sleek folder. "Mr. Ramsey?" the man said smoothly. "My name is Daniel Pike. I'm a legal consultant representing the Oakstone Hills HOA. Jack narrowed his eyes. "I've had enough of Oakstone Hills." Daniel smiled thinly. "I understand your frustration, but things have escalated beyond what the HOA intended. Karen, she has taken liberties." Jack crossed his arms. "She's been trespassing, harassing me, and now this, cutting my power." Daniel nodded. "I'm here to offer you a deal." Jack frowned. "A deal? Cooperate with us? Allow certain modifications to your fence to align more closely with neighborhood guidelines. In return, the HOA will officially drop all claims and cease all enforcement actions. We want peace, Mr. Ramsey." Jack's jaw tightened. "You want me to bend to an HOA I don't belong to?" Daniel's smile faded. "Think of it as pragmatic compromise. Sometimes resistance brings more harm than good." Jack felt a flash of anger. "I built that fence for my privacy and peace, not to please a neighborhood that isn't mine." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "Refusing this offer may force the HOA to take legal action. The costs, the delays, it's a battle that will wear you down." Jack's mind raced. Could he afford the fight? The idea of endless legal wrangling was exhausting, but the thought of giving in to Karen's demands, of letting her win by default, was worse. He straightened his shoulders. "I don't negotiate with trespassers." Daniel's expression hardened. "Very well, but remember this. The HOA has resources, people willing to do whatever it takes to preserve community standards. You're not just fighting a woman in a cardigan anymore." With that, Daniel turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing in the dim light of his porch. Days passed, each more unsettling than the last. Jack's fence was vandalized again, this time with graffiti. Compliance or consequences. Security footage captured shadowy figures lurking near the property line, sometimes at night, sometimes during the day. Neighbors who once nodded politely now avoided eye contact. Jack realized the battle had become more than just a dispute over wood and nails. It was a war for control, for respect, for survival. Late one night, Jack's phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "You don't belong here. Fix it or pay the price." Jack stared at the message, fists clenched. He wasn't sure who sent it. But one thing was clear. Karen's campaign was growing darker, and he was in its crosshairs. Jack felt the weight of the threats pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to burst. Every creak in the night, every shadow by the fence felt like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. The anonymous texts, the vandalism, the silent neighbors. It was as if the entire Oakstone Hills was conspiring to wear him down. One morning, he found a new, more chilling message scrawled on his mailbox in black spray paint. Last warning. Jack's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about a fence anymore. This was personal. He spent hours compiling every piece of evidence, photos, videos, notes, and sent them to his attorney with a plea for urgent help. The lawyer promised to file a restraining order if things escalated further. That afternoon, Jack went to meet Lisa Grant, the HOA president, hoping to get official support against Karen's relentless campaign. She greeted him with an unsettling smile. "Jack," she said smoothly, "I'm sorry about the trouble Karen's causing. She's passionate, but sometimes overzealous." Jack's eyes narrowed. "She's threatening me and trespassing. Why hasn't the board stopped her?" Lisa's smile faltered slightly. "We've tried, but Karen has a lot of influence. Some residents admire her dedication. It's complicated." Jack clenched his fists. "Complicated? I'm living a nightmare." Suddenly, Lisa lowered her voice. "There's something you should know. Karen's family has deep roots in Oakstone Hills. Some say she's protecting more than just fences. There's land development plans, financial stakes involved, people's livelihoods." Jack's mind spun. If Karen was guarding a bigger secret, his fence was just the tip of an iceberg. Just then, his phone buzzed with another message, this time, a photo of his backyard, taken from the street, captioned, "We're watching." Jack swallowed hard. This had gone beyond petty HOA drama. That night, he installed an extra camera facing the road and set up floodlights that bathed his yard in harsh light whenever motion was detected. Around midnight, the lights flashed on, blinding and sudden. Jack grabbed his phone and peered at the screen. A figure moved quickly through the glare. Karen. She held a thick envelope, which she pressed against the fence post before disappearing into the night. Jack ran outside and found the envelope. Inside were official-looking documents stamped with Oakstone Hills HOA seals. But the contents were a shock. A detailed plan to extend the HOA boundaries to include properties like his, a move that would legitimize Karen's demands. The document bore the signature of multiple board members, including Lisa Grant. Jack stared at the papers, heart pounding. He wasn't just fighting an overzealous neighbor anymore. He was up against a calculated, systemic takeover. The next morning, Jack confronted Lisa with the documents. Lisa sighed deeply. "Jack, it's a difficult situation. The HOA believes expanding will protect the community's property values." Jack shook his head. "It's a land grab, pure and simple. You're trying to strong-arm me out of my home." Lisa looked away. "Sometimes progress demands sacrifice." Jack's phone buzzed again. Another message. "It's too late to back down." But Jack knew it was never too late. This was his home, his fence, his fight, and he was ready to take it to the limit. Jack's mind raced as he stared at the HOA documents, the plan to annex his property, the signatures of the board, Lisa's reluctant confession. This wasn't just a petty neighbor's feud. It was a well-orchestrated power play designed to strip him of his rights. But Jack wasn't about to fold. That afternoon, he called a neighborhood meeting, sending out invitations to every homeowner along the Oakstone Hills border, those who might soon find themselves on Karen's hit list. At the community hall, tension buzzed in the air like static. Faces ranged from wary to curious, many familiar from local gatherings, but never before united like this. Jack stood before them, presenting The evidence, photos, videos, the annexation plan, and Karen's unchecked campaign. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "I'm not alone in this," Jack said, voice steady. "Karen's zealotry isn't just about fences, it's about control. And if they succeed, none of us will be safe." From the back, a woman stepped forward. "I'm Marissa. I live just outside the boundary. I got a letter like Jack's, unsigned, threatening. I was scared to speak up." Others nodded, voices trembling but growing stronger as they shared similar stories. Unexplained property damage, anonymous threats, invasive inspections. Together, the neighbors realized Karen's campaign wasn't isolated. It was a pattern, a silent oppression wielded by the HOA to consolidate power. The meeting sparked a grassroots movement. They formed a coalition to fight the annexation legally, leveraging local media and powerful attorneys. The HOA board found itself under scrutiny. Karen's power began to crumble. But just as victory seemed within reach, Jack received a call that chilled him to the bone. "Jack," Lisa's voice trembled. "Karen, she's been hospitalized. Heart attack." Jack was silent for a moment. Despite everything, part of him felt the weight of their conflict. This wasn't just a battle between neighbors. It was a story of obsession, loyalty, and the human cost of control. Days later, Karen's absence left a vacuum. The HOA board, now wary of public attention, rescinded the annexation plan. The coalition's pressure forced the HOA to establish clearer boundaries and transparent governance. Jack's fence stood, unyielding, a symbol of personal freedom. But the story didn't end there. One evening, as Jack returned home, he noticed a small envelope taped to his gate. Inside was a note in neat handwriting. "Thank you for standing your ground. Oakstone Hills needs balance. Karen needed a fight to remind her of limits. Maybe now, we all do." No signature. Jack smiled, a mix of relief and reflection. The fence wasn't just wood and nails. It was a boundary of respect, a line drawn not just in property, but in principles. And Jack knew one thing for sure. No matter the battles ahead, some fences were worth fighting for.